So what we did in the morning class, we are looking at creating objects, defining classes. So here I have the students class and I have created an object of type students. And we know how to invoke the methods for a class. How will you perform that for an object? How will you invoke methods for an object? You call the object reference dot method name. How will you invoke any data member for an object? How will you call that? Object name dot data member name. So this is what we have seen. Now let's take a look at this specific concept. Array of objects in Java. Why do we need an array of objects? What are the advantages of having an array of objects? So let's go step by step. Say I want to create three objects, student objects by name Satish, Ram and Tom. And I should also be invoking the methods set profile and view profile for all these objects. Then what are the steps? You create the object, object dot method name, you invoke that, and object dot view profile. So you perform this for one object. Likewise, I should create another object Ram. Again, I should perform this Ram dot add profile, Ram dot view profile. Again, I should create for Tom. So it is Tom dot view profile, Tom dot set profile. So for every object I'm creating, I should also be invoking the methods. Suppose I have an exercise like this: display all the objects whose address is from Vellore. Say display all the students who are from Vellore district. So in that case, I should be searching a list of objects I have created. How to search all the objects, find out who are the students who are from Vellore. And again, when you don't create an array of objects, you're going to have a lot of repetition in your code. It's like you don't have a for loop. What is going to have? You're going to repeat the statements again and again, right? So there are some disadvantages to do things without creating an array. So here, what we are going to do is, instead of creating separate objects like this, I mean independent objects, we are going to put all these objects inside an array. And you call that an array of objects. Let me show you how you declare an array of objects. So now I want to create three student objects by name Satish, Ram and Tom. What is the first step? You have to define the class student. I think we have already defined the class student, so that is done. How you create an array of objects? So here, this is the object name, and this pertains to an array of student objects. So here the class is actually students, and it's an array. And how many student objects we are going to refer to here? 3 student objects. So this is how you create an array of student objects. But there are certain things that we have to understand here. For instance, after I execute the statement, how memory gets allocated is, so you're going to have the stack and then the heap. So what is the reference here? Yes, that is under the main method. Let's assume that's under the main method. So under the main method, the reference gets allocated. So whenever you use new, the allocation will be on the heap. So what happens here is an array gets allocated on the heap, and the index for the array will be from 0, 1, 2. So this array is being pointed by the reference yes. So when you declare an array of students, this is what is getting assigned, but that doesn't mean that you can store the student info here inside the array. This is an array of student references. So what is happening here is you just create an array, and from here you're going to have references to the student objects. So there is one more step when you're creating an array of student objects. I'll go to the next slide and tell you what you have to do. So in the next slide, I'll tell you what you have to do. So here, this is what is created when you write this statement, when you execute this statement. But within this array, you can't store the students' data. So you should allocate separate areas on the heap for storing the students' data. For that, you have to write code that is given here. So you have to run through the length of the array. And then you start with s of 0 is equal to new student. So what is this? I will be starting from 0. So s of 0 is equal to new student, in the sense memory will be allocated to hold the students data, and the reference, let's say 0, f, 2, 3, something like that, will be stored here. So this is an array of references. So memory will be allocated for the first student. S of 0 is equal to new student. Whenever you use new, what will happen? Allocation will happen, and new students. So the class will be taken. So much memory will be allocated for holding the data for the first student. Likewise, now the loop goes to I is equal to 1. So what will happen? S of 1 is equal to new students. So it will go here, and then there will be a reference pointing to this allocation on the heap. So this will be for allocating the data for the second student object. And now the loop goes to S of 2 is equal to new student. So when this happens, the third allocation happens on the heap. So you can put the students data only inside the allocation shown here. The array is just used as a array of references to these allocations on the heap. So you need this kind of a structure to store an array of objects. You can't just stop with this statement. Please understand that. Okay, so now the allocations are happening. What next? We have to call our methods to populate the data in these locations. So let me tell you how to call the methods. The third step is invoking the set profile method for the objects. So we have done this. Next thing is, again I will run a for loop for int I is equal to 0, I less than s dot length I plus plus. S of I dot set profile. So I am calling this S of I dot set profile. What is the set profile? You already coded the set profile, it's here. So what's the value of I in the beginning? S of 0 dot set profile. So what is S of 0 dot set profile is going to do? Call this set profile method, enter your registration number, this dot registration number. Here this configures as S of 0 dot reg number. What is this here? S of 0. What is S of 0? This is S. This is 0. What is reg number? So that is S of 0 dot registration number. Likewise, when I say this dot name, this will be configured as S of 0 dot name, because how we are invoking the method S of 0 dot set profile. So what is S of 0 dot set profile? S0. And what is this S of 0 dot name? Satish. S of 0 dot city is nothing but S of 0 dot city. So this is the data for the first student object. How will you go with the next student object? So now this loop will move to 2. It will increment I by 1. I mean, this loop will go to the next iteration. So now it is S of 1 dot set profile. So when I do S of 1 dot set profile, what will happen? So here now this is S, this is 1, and now S of 1 dot registration number will be populated here. S of 1 dot name, S of 1 dot address. Are you all clear with this? How the allocation happens and how data gets populated? Let me again tell you this. Say what is the final iteration? S of 2 dot set profile. So this method will be called like this. So when I say S of 2 dot set profile, this method is going to be called, what is this dot registration number? How it will be called? S of 2 dot reg number. What is S of 2? We have a reference here. It comes to 2. So now we have a reference pointing here. So S of 2 dot reg number will be whatever data you enter here will be going to this location. Likewise, S of 2 dot name, S of 2 dot name will be given here. S of 2 dot city will be populated here. Very, very important. You should never stop just by declaring this statement. This is just for creating the array of references on the heap. What is the next step? You should run this for loop for the length of the array, and each reference should be pointing to an allocation on the heap. Then only you can allocate the student's data on that location. Got it? So that's how you create an array of objects. So we have set the profile. Suppose if I want to view the profile information of all the objects, how will I perform that? You invoke the view profile method. Again, you go with the for loop S of I dot view profile. So what is the view profile method we have coded? This dot registration number, this dot name, and this dot city. So what is the first thing here? S of 0 dot view profile. What is s of 0 dot view profile? Here we have s, here we have 0. So view profile is going to print this dot registration number. So what this will be? S of 0 dot reg number. So it's going to print this s of 0 dot name, s of 0 dot address. Likewise, it goes to s of 1, s of 1 dot registration number, s of 1 dot name, and s of 1 dot address. The final iteration is s of 2. So s of 2 dot name, registration number, and address. So every time you invoke methods for an array of objects, always use a loop. What are the steps in creating array of objects? First you create the array. Next you run a loop for the length of the array -1. You allocate the objects. And then finally you call the methods to allocate the data for these objects. So this is one famous exception while you're working with array of objects. I'll tell you why these exceptions happen. Most of the times students get these exceptions because they don't understand the concept behind array of objects. But null pointer exception is a famous exception. I'll tell you why it happens. Say let's take this very simple class, students class. We already know we have an S1 object reference, new students. So I create an object and then I call object name dot add profile info. So what happens is it creates the reference in the main, it allocates it on the heap, and then it allocates the data on the heap. What is the next step I am performing here? It's a small s, I'm sorry. So it is s1 is equal to null. I'm nullifying the reference. That is, this reference is removed. When I perform s1 is equal to null, it's not going to point to the location. After this, when I perform s1 dot view profile, what view profile does? It's trying to print s1 dot name, s1 dot registration number, s1 dot city. But is there an access to s1 dot name? No, because we have removed the reference. So when you try to print something like this, it's not able to understand what is s1 dot name because you have removed the reference. So you're going to get here null pointer exception. See, I'm pointing to null and you're asking me to fetch data from somewhere on the heap. So this is one of the famous exceptions, null pointer exception, which you will arise at. You can very well try if you just create an object and then you make the object reference point to null. You try to access some data members for the object, you will get null pointer exception. The next scenario is with array of objects, how will you get null pointer exception? Very common. So you create an array of student objects here. So you created the array of references, I will say. And then what you did, you didn't allocate the memory on the heap, but you try to do something like this, print s of 0 dot name. Did you allocate? The references are not pointing to any allocation on the heap, but you're trying to access s of 0 dot name. It comes to s of 0, but what is this name? It doesn't understand. So null pointer exception happens. So to avoid this null pointer exception, what code you should run? You should run a for loop. You should allocate these locations and then you should allocate the data on these locations. So this is how you create an array of objects. And what are the advantages of array of objects? Less number of lines of code, and it's also easy to search when you have an array of objects. It's easy to work with an array of objects. So we'll take up some demo here. I'll show you some demo. Are you all clear with these concepts? Let's take a look at the demo. So this is how you create objects. Now let's create an array of objects. So it's students. It's an array. So you denote it as an array, new student. And then how many objects I'm going to store? 3 object references will be stored here. Now, if I just do sysout s of 0 dot name, something like this, if I perform this, what will happen? Without allocating memory, if I try to execute something like this, then it's going to throw me an null pointer exception. See, null pointer exception is thrown. So how to avoid this error is, first you have to allocate memory, say for int I is equal to 0, I less than s dot length, I plus plus. So for all the references in your array, what you have to do is S of I is equal to new students. So this is very important step. You should never forget this step in your examinations while you're working with array of objects. Without this step, your entire code is obsolete. It's not going to work. So this one you finish. Next you have to call the view profile and set profile methods. Again you will go with an int I is equal to 0, I less than s dot length, I plus plus, and then you just call s of I. Don't forget this, s of I dot set profile. So it will run from s of 0 dot set profile, s of 1 dot set profile, s of 2 dot set profile, and then it will terminate. So you'll be able to put the data in the locations on the heap. Finally, if you want to view all the profile info, what you have to do? You have to go with for int I is equal to 0, I less than s dot length, I plus plus, and then s of I dot view profile. Never forget these things. Now let's see whether our objects are fine, whether our array is fine. Let's run this. Okay, so 3 objects. First object is 111. I'll enter my name Satish, and then city is Vellore. So view profile will come later on. So we'll have the second object 112. Ram, say is from Chennai. Third object 113. Say Tom is from US. View setting object data is done. Next for loop will execute s of 0 dot view profile, s of 1 dot view profile, s of 2 dot view profile. Are you all clear with this? Now can you perform this exercise? Search the array of objects, display the name of all the students who are from Vellore. Search the array of objects, display the names of all the students who are from this address, Vellore. That's what you have to do. So we have created an array of objects, we have populated the data, we are able to view the profile info. What next we are going to do is, maybe we will have another method, public. I'll call this a static method, void search students, and I'm going to pass the array of student objects here. So you call that students, it's an array. I'll pass the array as T. I've created the array. I'm just passing the array of student objects to this method. And how to check whether a student is from Vellore. So what we can do is we can run a for loop for int I is equal to 0, I less than t dot length, because that is the array we are getting in here, and I plus plus. What we are going to check here is if t of I dot address or city, here I have defined it as city, dot equals, so you are comparing strings here, dot equals Vellore. What I can do, I can print sys out t of I dot name, searching the array, printing the name, and then I can also set a boolean flag to be true. So here I'll have a boolean variable, boolean found is equal to true or false. I will say initially it is false, then it is set to true. If the flag is never set, what we can say, this out, no students from Vellore district or no students from Vellore city. So what I have done in this method, passing the array of student objects which I have created, and then running through the entire array, scanning say t of 0 dot city, whether it is equal to Vellore, t of 1 dot city equal to Vellore, t of 2 dot city equal to Vellore. If it is equivalent to Vellore, print the name, set the boolean flag to true. If this was never set to true, say no students from Vellore. So we'll see whether this search really works. See, I've defined this as a static method. We'll come to what are static methods and static data members later on. But why I've declared this as static is because I don't need an object to really invoke this static method. I can use the class name to invoke it. So what I can do here is I can just call students dot search students, and then you pass the array that you have created. I'm sorry, it's not here. I'm in the wrong place here. So I should be in the main method. After creating the array, I don't think we need view profile here. We just need to search profile. Let me delete this. And here I'll just call students dot search students, and then what is the array? Yes, I'm passing. So this array is getting passed here, and that will be used inside my method for searching. So let's run this and check whether we are able to print the data of students who are from Vellore. So let me enter registration number 111 Satish. Satish is from Vellore. Registration number 112 Ram. Ram is from Chennai. And let's say registration number 113 we'll have Mohan, who is from Vellore. Okay. It says no students from Vellore because there is a case problem here. That is, I gave a capital V here. Here it's a small v. Maybe I will make it a capital V. So it will match the cases too. So let's run it again. But one thing, if it's not matching, one of the test cases is fine. No students from Vellore is coming up. But if it is matching, we should get the names of these two students. Let's again check that 111 Satish and Vellore, 112 Ram and Chennai. So we'll have the third student, say Mohan from Vellore. So two students are from Vellore, Satish and Mohan. We were able to search it. One of the students, that is Ram, is from Chennai. If none of these students are from Vellore, it's going to say no such students from Vellore district. So we were able to search an array of objects here.